Well, welcome back, everybody. We are checking in with Curtis from Wild Birds Unlimited, and perfect time of year, as always, I guess, at this time of the year, Curtis, to really focus on the birds. We talked about, though, throughout the winter, a lot about supporting birds and how important that is. And you saw a lot of people doing what they could to ensure that birds were going to survive the winter, because that can be a pretty scary time for them.
Yeah, I mean, especially during the cold snap that we got in February. I mean, we had such a sort of mild winter.
Yeah.
And seeing the people come in the store who aren't traditionally bird feeders, but they just wake up one morning during a cold snap and they feel like they need to do anything they can to help. And, you know, I think one thing that's kind of understated about feeding birds is the generosity. And it's a really kind and caring thing that people do to look after wildlife and, you know, help supplement nature the best we can. So I just think it's really important to acknowledge how you know how generous it is to do.
No, yeah, and that's a good way of looking at it like that, right? I mean, people are going out of their way to care for the birds throughout those colder months. And I know that, you know, we talked about all sorts of different feeding options and what you're supposed to do, because it's hard to know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had a lot of customers coming in asking, okay, what can I do? So now that we're sort of transitioning out of winter into spring, we're not quite there just yet, but it is warming up out there. There's still the tail end of winter feeding going on, though, right?
Yeah, there's sort of every season brings new challenges. So, you know, during winter, the days are short, the nights are long, and the temperatures are low. The benefit that birds generally have in the winter is they've got the whole growing seasons of food available naturally. So often natural food supply is actually the most abundant during the winter months when life is the hardest. Right. So as we get into the springtime, the demand for energy decreases, but the availability of food decreases. So now we're at the tail end. We're about to have billions of birds pass through the region during migration and sort of strip away whatever food is left. What we're seeing anecdotally is that there's not a lot of food left in many areas. So as we get into spring, reintroduce all these birds and then get into nesting season where there's such a high demand for birds to, you know, feed their young and build nests, the challenges are different, but just as dangerous for their survival.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that we're maybe not seeing as much food left over.
Yeah.
Reasons for that? Or?
You know, it's pretty natural with you know the way that the cycles work, but you know just the amount of birds that have hung around this winter and not had to travel far, it's taken a toll on the natural food, and even just with predators and stuff, you know, the amount of bobcats that are showing up in people's yards. There's all sorts of funny things happening you know, in the territory, but it's more or less natural at this point in the year for natural food sources to be pretty depleted.
Okay, so as we transition then into the spring, as you say, it is going to be a really important time, again, to take care of the birds. You brought a few items that are good options for feeding in the spring. I know a lot of people talk about the fact that they don't want the big mess in their yard, and maybe that deters a lot of people from helping the birds just because they're like, oh, it's going to be such a mess. But it doesn't have to be, and you have a lot of options for that.
Definitely. I mean, the tolerance for a mess in the yard definitely goes up in the wintertime when there's snow and people aren't worried about things growing in their yard. But in the springtime, that's a really important thing. People aren't looking to attract critters like, you know, mice and stuff like that, as well as having sprouts grow in their yard. So we've got some really clean, no mess options, like the sunflower chips at the front there in the large bag. They're a really nice option that the vast majority of birds, especially little birds in our area, enjoy. There's no shell, there's no waste, so they're not picking through it and throwing it everywhere. And because it's out of the shell and all edible, the value for the seed is really nice. So,
and you mentioned the word clean. These are all clean options, which is you don't want fillers in the food, right?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the filler. The filler takes up 80% of most big box store bags. Okay. So all of that is inedible. So if you buy, let's just use, you know, 10-pound bag, for example, 8 pounds instantly goes to the ground as the birds flick through it. The remaining 20% is still half shell. So in that 10-pound bag, you may have about 1 pound of edible food.
Oh my goodness.
The other 9 pounds all over the ground.
Oh, so look what you're paying for.
Yeah, a lot of waste. So
and not providing enough food then, right?
Yeah,
and it is a lot of waste.
Attracts a lot of undesirable birds as well. Not that any birds are undesirable, but people are looking for colorful, happy small songbirds and stuff like that. So by offering the right ingredients, you're going to get more variety.
Right.
Less mess, better value.
Okay. And then, so that's, and then there's a couple of other ones that are
so
great too.
We've got blends as well as individual ingredients.
Okay.
So, if you're looking for an all-round blend, we've got all sorts of blends that are mixed with sunflower, peanuts, millet, stuff like that. We also sell the individual ingredients like the peanuts in and out of the shell, right down to like peanut pieces and all sorts of specialty things.
That's amazing.
So it really, if you are looking for something to feed birds, if it's specific, there's a high likelihood that we have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Curtis. We're not done with you just yet. We're going to talk, I think, a little bit more about feeding options and different ways that you can reduce that mess in just a moment. But more information on the screen. We're back in just a sec. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about birds, and we've got the bird expert here, Curtis himself, of course, owner of Wild Birds Unlimited. And just sort of following up to what we were just chatting about, Curtis, the clean options for feeding birds, the importance of not only feeding birds in the winter, which I think Kamloops did a great job of doing, but now as we transition into spring and nesting season, there's some risks out there for birds at this time of the year as well. So before we get into what you brought here in terms of how you can set up your yard, what kind of birds are we really going to start seeing now over the next little while? I mean, you can already hear them chirping.
For sure.
There was quite a few that hung around over the winter too.
Yeah, so I mean, with the exception of the birds that do stay, your chickadees, sparrows, finches, things like that, they're sort of going to come in waves. So what we have is usually the red-winged blackbirds start showing up first because they don't migrate very far. So they're already starting to show up in pretty large numbers. And then you'll start to see like mountain bluebirds are starting to show up in the southern Okanagan, the Soyuz and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of time before they start arriving. And then, all the colorful warblers, tanagers, goldfinch, things like that. Some may be around, but birds in general are going to start really moving, whether they've migrated or not.
And people will get excited about that.
Definitely, yeah. People,
they already are, right?
Yeah.
And you alluded to the fact that everybody wants to have those colorful birds in their yards. So in terms of feeding, we know that there's a lot of options for no mess that you offer at the store, but you brought this really fun kind of setup that you could put in your yard that will help not only protect or feed the birds, but protect them.
Yeah, so we have a lot of, we've talked a lot about the seed and the types of foods we're using and how to do it in a better way. But the how to hang the feeders, that sort of feeders to hang. So we've got our advanced pole system here, and this is just a really simple example set up on our patio base here. Okay. We've got options that go on decks, in the ground, and then of course on top of patios like this.
Okay.
And they can be customized. I mean, this is a really simple form of it, but so what we have here is with the pole system, what it allows you to do is it allows you to put the feeder in a good spot in your yard that's going to be more likely to attract birds. It's going to be easier for you to see from inside your house, which is, really the point that we do it. And then other things like being able to equip it with the Easy Connect bird baths, as well as the baffles. A lot of people, when they're thinking about feeding the birds, they're thinking about the critters. There's mammals out there, squirrels, mice, whichever.
And you don't want to attract those.
No.
You want to deter them, really.
Yeah. So if you're using a clean seed, you're not going to be spilling it onto the ground, but the mammals can still get up to the feeders. So when you equip a baffle onto a pole system like that, you're sort of attacking the critters at both angles. So they're not going to be able to get to the feeders, and there won't be food on the ground spilling out. So you're kind of really getting ahead of it that way.
Yeah, that's good.
And then as far as the feeders that we have hanging on there, as we start to get into the nesting season, some nuisance birds for some people start to get pretty prevalent, like the starlings and magpies.
Yeah.
So we have all sorts of options, like this cage feeder here, which is designed only to allow small birds to go in and out of.
Yeah, they can fit right through there.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised. They almost prefer it. They'll just zip in and out, like the cage isn't even there.
Yeah.
But starlings or magpies, other sorts of blackbirds, they're too big to get in there. So these have been a really bulletproof option to sort of keep away those larger birds.
That's
and
a great option.
I mean, really, whatever the problem or concern is, we have a solution for it.
Yeah, I feel like you do. That's amazing. And then the little birdhouse up there, that's our bird feeder there. That's also, I mean, it's aesthetically pleasing, first of all.
It's
but also really functional as well.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice looking feeder. It's really high quality. Like most of our products, it has a lifetime guarantee on it. It's a plastic feeder that's actually made from recycled milk jugs. It's got the nice metal tray, which I don't think you can see on camera, at the bottom of it. And then it also is really nicely mixed with a no mess blend because it doesn't have any way for the seed to kind of fall out of it. So it's a really nice hopper feeder for sure.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then you alluded to the bird bath. Do you recommend having that option for birds in your yard too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water is as crucial as food in a lot of circumstances, both in the summer and the winter.
Right.
Having that is not only really beneficial to the birds for keeping their feathers clean, which is often overlooked, but staying hydrated. But another thing that's really important with it as well is it will attract birds that aren't traditionally attracted by food.
Oh,
so some birds
interesting.
like robins and other non-traditional bird feeder birds are tough to bring into your yard unless you have natural habitat that attracts them.
Right.
But by offering a source of water, you can virtually attract any type of bird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
A lot of fun.
See, he's the bird expert, everybody. Thank you, Curtis. Such a pleasure checking in with you. And I know we'll be talking birds as we go forward through the spring and getting into nesting season as well. Visit Wild Birds Unlimited. They have everything you could ask for when it comes to feeding birds, all the options, and Curtis and his team happy to help you out. There's more information on the screen. Back in a moment.